fellas, real talk. If you've ever heard just communicate better and felt your body armor go up like Riot Shield, this one's for you. Welcome to Mind Over Masculinity. Today, we're unpacking the split second reflex that turns good intentions into bad patterns, the brain hijack. Our guest, Diane McDowell, is a therapist and coach who helps high performers lead love the way they lead boardrooms, with clarity, calm, and presence. She blends neuroscience, somatics, and emotional leadership to rewire the reflexes that torpedo connection. No fluff, no shame, just a new operating system for being solid under pressure. Let's get you out of survival mode and into leadership without tiptoeing, stonewalling, or blowing up. Diane, it's so nice to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Yes. So, Diane, you say you're not reacting to your partner, you are reacting to your own wiring. For the guys who swear she just knows how to set me off, what does it look like to separate her behavior from your nervous system's pattern in real time?
This is so important because so much of the time we think we're reacting to what they said, the tone of voice, but what we're really reacting to is the reaction in our body. Our body goes into hijack mode and it's like danger, danger. Our body, our nervous system is set up to protect us, to keep us safe. So as soon as there's a sigh, there's a look that we think a certain way, as soon as there's a change in their body, our alarms go off and say danger, danger. And so we're not responding to them. We're responding to our body saying it's in danger, and we're reacting to that, not our partner.
True. And this makes me wonder, what's a 10-second intercept a man can use mid-argument to shift from reactivity to self-leadership without bailing or bulldozing?
And what we can do, men and women, but especially men, is really get present in our body and be like, what's happening for me? What we want to do is we want to look at them and be like, they're endangering me, so we want to attack. So anytime we have this urge to attack to keep ourselves safe, what we really need to do is get grounded in our body. Be like, what's happening? Where is it happening in my body? What is going on for me? It's not about them. It's about me. One of the things that people can do is start practicing this concept of words are neutral. They just said words. My reaction is what I'm responsible for. Their words are just, so then when you say the 10 seconds, what you can do in 10 seconds, their words are neutral. I get to decide how I respond.
Yes, true. To take a moment for ourselves to think about what's really going on here, right?
Yeah. And trying to stay in our body, like, what is happening in my body? Tension in my shoulders, tension in my face. Is my breathing changed? Because the minute we go into that space, we can't be neutral. We can't connect in love when we're in danger mode. Those two cannot be simultaneously happening. So when your body's going danger, danger, you can't connect with your partner.
Yes. I feel like one can start with observing the small changes that we do, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So, got it. So, we are not exonerating bad behavior, we're auditing the trigger path, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've had a lot of men say are game changers for them is really starting to say, I am always responsible for my response. I am always. So even in the workforce, I've had a lot of men say that has just changed everything for me because when I own my response, I don't look at them anymore. I decide how I want to show up. So I think just starting like finding what I call power sentences that you remind yourself to help you stay with, I get to show up how I want to be, proud of how I show up, and that's all that matters.
Yes. Rather than thinking she's the problem, start thinking, what's the problem? Or here's the problem, right?
What's going on with me versus what are they doing? What's happening for me? What do I need to do? And a lot of my clients say they're Diane-isms. They're like things that I tell my clients, and they're like, I hear you in my head saying, like how you show up, walk away from every conversation proud of how you handled it. And so having those mantras in your head, like, I want to walk away proud of how I handle it.
True. And that pattern lives in the nervous system, which leads straight to something you teach brilliantly, the survival reflex that mistakes closeness for threat. So you say when your nervous system is in survival mode, love feels like a threat. That's a paradox. How do safety and closeness get crosswired, especially for men who grew up with don't feel, just fix?
Yeah. And that's kind of part of the thing is getting out of the stop fixing. It's not mine to fix. Like fixing them, teaching them. A lot of times people will say, "Well, I have to teach them how they can treat me." No, that's not really our job. Our job is to be responsible for us. So tell me your question again so I make sure I answer your question.
Yeah, sure, sure. How do safety and closeness get crosswired, especially for men who grew up with don't feel, just fix?
Okay. And what often happens is our brain says danger, danger. And when we get into that space of danger, we cannot feel connected. So we have to first get unhooked. We have to unhook our brain from the hijack so then we can feel connected. And that's where it's really being connected to ourselves and removing ourselves. But one of the things, and John Gottman talks a lot about this, when we remove ourselves, we've got to do it from love, not fear. If we do it from, because what's happening is our brain is in a fear place. And when our brain gets hijacked, we literally think that our fear is truth. So our brain tells us all of our fears are facts or truth. And so we react that way. So we've got to be able to unhijack before we can start to create a connection. And a lot of times that means we maybe step away. But when we step away, we do it from love. A lot of couples that I work with, they do it from anger and they're like, want to say something mean. They say something mean and then they leave. Well, then the other person's in fear reaction. So we've got to be able to leave from a place of love, or if we need to, or learn how to be able to stay in our presence and hold space for my brain is telling me I'm in danger, but I know I'm not. And that's where the power really happens when we're like, oh, my brain's just telling me I'm in danger. My brain is telling me because our brain is searching for danger. And so our brain tells us you're in danger, they're trying to hurt you. And so our brain reacts to that. So it's our job to hold space for acknowledging that's just my brain telling me. It's not fact.
Yes.
And the other part is even if they are trying to hurt you, they're in brain hijack too.
Mm.
So if they're in that place where you're both trying to hurt each other because you're in brain hijack and you're thinking the other person's dangerous, that's when you may need to take a timeout.
Yes, yes. I feel like it's essentially saying try to restore your safety rather than win the point, right?
100%. Totally, you got it. Restore your own safety because when you feel safe, and this is what all relationships come back to is all we want is to feel understood by our partner, our person.
Mm.
Doesn't matter who it is. We just want to feel understood. And when we don't, our brain starts to tell us scary things and we start to withdraw and they feel our withdrawal and it feeds on each other. The more, the more. And the more you do, I do. So if we can get insight and calm ourselves down, everything changes. They don't feel it changes the whole dynamic. And so many times I have couples say, um, I need my partner to get into treatment with me. And I'm like, no, you really don't. Only one person has to change for everything to change. And very
Mm.
quickly, I have had clients in one session who the whole dynamic changes because they no longer get hijacked. And so the relationship doesn't, the fights don't escalate anymore.
True, true. And the fastest route to influence is presence rather than pressure, right?
Yes, yes, being present and there's no pressure to it. There's no manipulation. You're just being
Mm.
totally present and then you can come from love and it's not this pressure of trying to manipulate them, trying to say certain things to get a result or get their engagement the way trying to get them to do something different.
Mm. True, true. Right, true. And Diane, let's talk about one big myth in modern relationships. So, thinking communication alone will fix what dysregulation keeps breaking. Most advice scream communicate more. How does over talking without regulation actually escalate the conflict?
Yes. This is so good because so many people are told talk more, go on more date nights, communicate better, use
Mm.
these tools, make I statements. And not that those are wrong, but the problem is if I'm hijacked and you're trying to talk to me, we're just going to fight. And
Mm.
so many of my couples or people that I work with will say, there's so much tension. And I'm like, but you don't have to engage with that attention. It takes two to have tension. You don't
Mm.
have to engage with that tension. You can drop it. And I use the example of a tug of war, pulling the
Yeah,
rope back and
yeah,
forth.
tug of war. Mm.
You can just drop the rope and there's no tension. So tell me your question again.
It is most advice screams communicate more. How does over talking without regulation actually escalates the conflict?
Yes. And the reason it does is because if we're not grounded, we are going to see them as the enemy. We are going to see the other
Mm.
person as dangerous. And so our communication is not, it's with pressure, it's with urgency.
Mm.
What I teach my clients is don't do anything from a place of urgency because you are setting yourself up for like this energy that's going to create a hijack, a brain hijack. So when you're not grounded, don't communicate because you are only
True.
going to escalate things. So go ground yourself, get unhijacked, go get really inside, like comfortable with you, and then have a conversation. So that's why more communication, more pressure date nights where you feel like you have to do it don't work because until you're unhijacked, those things aren't
Mm.
going to work.
True, true. If we are not mentally prepared, how will we take a communication? We won't be able to take away any points from that communication. Right.
Yeah. And I would add with that communication thing is a lot of times we need to set our communication up for success when we do it, and that's things
Mm.
like making sure it's the only like 15 minutes at a time where people can both stay focused and really be present because true communication takes a lot of work really being
True.
present with that person. And so, even if you're grounded, after 15 minutes, you may start finding that you're starting to get hijacked and annoyed. So, making sure that you check in with each other. Is this a good time to talk when you are grounded? And then, how long can you talk and stay grounded? Because if not, you'll get hijacked and then the conversation ends up just a spiral anyway.
True, true. Because presence can turn into dominance at any time if you're not mentally grounded. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So really making sure that when you're ready to talk, you kind of have a plan. And I call them power sentences of like, I'm gonna responsible for me. I'm not responsible for them. How they interpret what I say, I'm not responsible for, but I am responsible for how I say it. And
Mm.
making sure you own. And then if you don't like how you showed up, you apologize. You're like, hey, that didn't come out right. Let me try again. When we're grounded, we can do that. When we aren't hijacked, we can do that. When we're hijacked, we're not going to apologize for saying something mean at the moment.
True, true. And this brings me to our next question. For men who equate leadership with dominance, how do you sell them on presence as the more potent play?
Okay. So there's, in my mind, there's power, there's internal power, and there's force.
Mm.
And a lot of times men will try to use force. And so when I work with men, I often help them see the difference between internal power is ownership of me and where I have responsibility. But a lot of times I have men who are executives, they run companies, they're bosses. And so they're like, talk to their spouse like that. And it doesn't work.
Mm.
So, really working on at my job in my workforce, I dominate more force that I am because of my position. That's how I talk to people. When I come home, I need to have internal power. So I separate those like I had a client the other night and he said he was really frustrated because his wife had bought a treadmill and it wasn't working right. They didn't bring the right parts. And he said, I just told her return it. And I was like, well, with one of your friends, is that how you would talk to them? And he was like, no, I would never. I would ask them questions and be like, what'd you end up doing? And I was like, so why do you talk to her but different than your friends? And so starting to notice for men, do I talk to my partner as if they're my friend versus do I talk to my partner as they're an employee?
True, true. Because at the end of the day, they both are on the same level. They are like colleagues. They are friends. They should be friends. And they
Yeah.
do not have an hierarchy between them. So one should understand that, I feel like.
Yeah. Or there shouldn't be. I call it a parent child relationship, but there's a
Mm.
hierarchy there. That's a parent child relationship versus partnership. And so,
Mm.
how do you talk to someone who is a partner, not
Mm.
an employee or someone that doesn't matter to you? So,
True.
really starting to know the difference between internal power and force. And force is trying to force somebody, force you. And a lot of times we can kind of force because of our status or um, our job title.
Mm.
But in a marriage, that's not how it
True.
works.
Yes, yes. And that's a big frame for masculine leadership at home, I feel like.
Yes. Yeah, and so for men to start realizing what role do I take on here? Am I showing up in a way that creates a dynamics for equality, or am I showing up in a way that is actually creating her brain to get hijacked very easily?
Yeah, yeah, true, true. And Diane, you often say you can rewire your default and it doesn't take years. Can you walk us through your brain to heart code in simple terms? What changes first, second, third, and when someone starts that process?
Okay. So first you have to understand that your brain is getting hijacked and what that is. That it's
Mm,
a neuropath that we are designed to have. It is not a problem. It is not a default in you. It is what our brain is designed to do to keep us safe.
mm,
So what I tell people to do is befriend our brain, talk to our brain, soothe it. Like it is just doing its job. And when we fight it, when we get mad at it, we create this energy that's unhealthy with our brain.
mm,
So, understanding and working with your brain that your brain is actually your friend, it's your biggest asset. It is not a problem. It's just that we haven't learned. Nobody teaches us how do you work with your brain? How do you understand that every thought your brain gives you isn't true? Like we
mm,
have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. We don't have to believe those. And so, learning how to identify your brain as a friend and talk to your brain as a friend and start realizing when your brain is getting hijacked. So, number one is noticing when it's hijacked and
mm,
how to work with the hijack.
mm,
Number two is starting to create a safe environment because we can't feel connected to somebody when we don't feel safe. If I'm hijacked, I can't feel a connection. No matter how much you love me, I can't feel it.
mm,
So, a lot of times people will say the most important emotion or most important thing we can do is love somebody. But if I don't feel safe, I'm not going to feel that love. So I've got to create a safety. And here's what often happens is women will look for men to make them feel safe. And that is a problem because they cannot. It is an internal thing that women need to do. So a lot of work I do with women is helping them take ownership of their safety and stop trying to put it on the men that it's their job to make them feel safe.
mm.
So, men, it is not your job to make your partner feel safe. Now, there's things you can do to help with that, but you can't make someone else feel. That's just not your responsibility. You can't do that. So, number two is creating a safe environment. And then the third one is really returning back to you. So, it's remembering who you are. So many people, for men, it's a little bit different for women, but for men, what I see a lot is I feel so criticized or I feel like I do things wrong that I just stop talking. I stop showing up. I just kind of shut down.
Mm.
And so you can't create connection if you shut down. So it's learning how to be like, I'm responsible for me and how I show up. And I'm creating a safe place for me. So I had a guy the other day who said, my wife said, "You're wearing that to their appointment." And he was like, "Yep." And before he said, I would have got all upset and I would have gone and changed clothes and been mad at her all day. And he was like, "No, I just said, yep, that's what I'm wearing." And it's like returning back to you and feeling comfortable just saying, yeah, that's who I am. I don't have to justify. I don't have to defend. If you want to ask me to change clothes, you're welcome to ask me. We can ask anything of our partner. But that doesn't mean I'm bad because I chose to wear something you wouldn't have picked.
True, true. And I feel like most of the problems, if not all, start with two basic steps. One is awareness, understanding the root cause, and the second one is acceptance, looking at it as a part of our personality, as a part of our body, and not as a flaw, right?
Yes. Yeah. Acceptance is the start to everything. And a lot of times people will say, but if I accept it, that means I agree with it. No, it means you're acknowledging it's there and then you've got to decide what you do with it. But we can't argue with reality and win. The more we argue with reality, the more exhausted we are because we're throwing that energy away. But when we can accept that this is just who we are, then we can work with it. Like for men, a lot of times it's I get frustrated after a long conversation and I feel like we're getting nowhere. Okay, then let's work with that. Like, that's not a
Mm,
problem until we decide it's a problem in our head. It's
mm.
just something that we can learn to work with.
True, true. And Diane, well, that was a wonderful conversation. But before we wrap our episode, for our listeners who would love to connect with you, please tell them the ways to do so.
My website is powerfulquestionscoaching.com. And the reason I named it that is because questions are so powerful. If I could tell men anything, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Like that is a game changer because people want to feel connected and questions do it. So powerfulquestionscoaching.com is my website. And then on there, under Work With Me, there's a quiz you can take. It's free. It tells you about which kind of brain hijack you have. And then there's a 20-minute mini course that tells you how to unhijack your brain. So they're both there. Or DianeMcDowell.com. You can find me there as well.
Amazing. Great. So all the ways and the website, everything will be in show notes. So I request all our listeners to go and check that too. Then that was a wonderful conversation, and I'm so glad you came to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yes. Men, here's the move. Stop outsourcing your peace to your partner's behavior. Audit your wiring. Build safety like it's your daily training block. Lead with presence, not pressure. If you felt called out today, good. That's your nervous system asking for an upgrade, not a scolding. Huge gratitude to Diane McDowell for handing us a playbook that's equal parts science and soul. If this hit, share it with a brother who's tired of blowing up, shutting down, or checking out. Then pick one rep, one breath, one boundary, one repair, and run it today. You're not broken. You're built for leadership. Let's prove it, one regulated movement at a time. Thank you for tuning in. This has been your host, Charu, and you've been listening to Mind Over Masculinity.